For decades, Johnny Depp has been one of Hollywood's most enigmatic figures. A man of extraordinary talent, limitless imagination, and a quiet mystery that followed him from film set to red carpet to courtroom. But now, at 61, after years of silence, introspection, and hard-won battles, Johnny Depp has finally revealed something that fans have whispered about for years, something many suspected, but never truly knew. It's not a scandal. Not a confession of wrongdoing. Not another Hollywood twist. What he has revealed is far deeper, personal, emotional, and profoundly human. For the first time in his life, Johnny is pulling back the curtain not on a character, but on himself. He speaks openly about his struggles, his regrets, his fears, and the truth behind the persona the world thought it understood. The revelation isn't shocking because it is scandalous, it is shocking because it is honest. Raw. Vulnerable. In this intimate documentary, we explore the moment Johnny decided to finally speak out, the years that shaped him, the pressure that nearly broke him, and the one truth he spent a lifetime hiding, not out of shame, but out of survival. A truth that explains his behavior, his choices, and the complex, misunderstood man behind the legend. What Johnny Depp has revealed isn't just a statement. It is a window into a wounded heart, a creative genius, and a soul finally ready to heal. Johnny Depp's story begins long before Hollywood ever learned his name. Born in Owensboro, Kentucky, and raised in a family that moved constantly, young Johnny never felt rooted anywhere, not in a town, not in a school, not even in his own home. His childhood was turbulent, wrapped in the chaos of instability and marked by moments of fear he rarely talked about publicly. As a teenager, music became his escape. The guitar was his shield, the stage his refuge. For a while, he believed he would become a musician, not an actor. But destiny had a curious way of redirecting him. A visit to Los Angeles with his band led him to Nicolas Cage, who encouraged him to try acting. Johnny agreed, hesitantly, and the audition that followed changed everything. But success came with a cost. From 21 Jump Street to Edward Scissorhands to Pirates of the Caribbean, the world saw a chameleon, a man capable of disappearing into any role. But behind the artistry was someone who never felt comfortable in the spotlight. Johnny often described fame as a monster you must constantly feed, and despite his global popularity, he struggled endlessly with self-doubt. The applause felt distant, the scrutiny felt suffocating. And as the years went on, the misunderstandings multiplied. To the world, his quiet demeanor was mysterious. His eccentric fashion sense was strange. His avoidance of Hollywood's social circles seemed rebellious. Fans suspected there was something deeper happening, something unspoken. And they were right. Because behind the acting genius was a man fighting battles he didn't yet have the words to explain. By the time he reached his 50s, the storm intensified. Public conflicts, legal battles, failing health, and emotional exhaustion left him more isolated than ever. But in that isolation came an unexpected shift. Instead of retreating from the world, Johnny began questioning his own silence. Why had he kept so much hidden? Why had he built walls instead of bridges? Why had he allowed others to shape his narrative? As he approached 61, something changed. Johnny began opening up to the people closest to him, friends, collaborators, and ultimately, the public. What he revealed shocked many, not because it was controversial, but because it explained everything. Years of pain. Years of confusion. Years of misunderstood choices. And for the first time, the world saw Johnny Depp not as a character, not as a myth, but as a man finally ready to tell his truth. For years, Johnny Depp lived inside a whirlwind, a constant clash between the larger-than-life characters he played and the quiet, wounded man he really was. But as he reached his early 60s, he finally found the courage to reveal the truth so many people had suspected for years. His lifelong struggle wasn't fame, money, or career pressure, it was the battle inside his own mind. Not a diagnosis. Not a label. But a truth shaped by trauma, sensitivity, and decades of emotional survival. What he ultimately shared was this: Johnny had spent most of his life fighting crippling self-doubt, a sense of unworthiness so deeply rooted that he often believed the characters he played deserved applause, but he didn't. And everything the world interpreted as eccentricity or rebellion was, in reality, a shield. In his own words, he described it as building a character to protect the man. He explained that from childhood through adulthood, he carried an internal voice that constantly questioned whether he was enough, good enough, strong enough, lovable enough. It influenced everything: the roles he chose, the relationships he struggled to maintain, and the walls he built around his private life. And it wasn't until the last few years, after everything was stripped away, after painful public battles, after losing friends, relationships, and trust, that Johnny finally understood what he'd been running from: himself. This revelation didn't happen overnight. It came slowly, through long conversations with therapists, musicians, artists, and close friends. Through journaling. Through brutally honest reflection. And through the peace he found living quietly in Europe after stepping back from Hollywood. He spoke about the mask of the misunderstood, how the world believed he was mysterious because he wanted to be, when in truth he was simply afraid of being truly seen. He admitted that the bohemian outfits, the layers of scarves, the jewelry, the glasses, the hats, those weren't fashion statements. They were armor. A way to hide in plain sight. And then he revealed the part that shocked even his closest circle. For decades, Johnny didn't believe he deserved joy. Not because of fame. Not because of mistakes. But because he carried guilt from his past, guilt from his childhood, guilt from lost friendships, guilt from feeling like he was always disappointing someone. And that guilt shaped him more than any role he ever played. He talked about how this silent struggle pushed him to work obsessively, creating worlds on screen where he could be someone braver, louder, freer than he felt in real life. Characters like Captain Jack Sparrow or Edward Scissorhands weren't just performances, they were emotional escapes. But the turning point came when Johnny realized something powerful. He wasn't alone. While traveling and performing with his band, he met countless fans who had overcome trauma, anxiety, and depression. People who told him that his characters helped them survive dark times. He said their honesty gave him strength to stop hiding, and inspired him to finally speak his own truth. And so the revelation he made at 61 wasn't a confession of scandal or a dramatic twist. It was something far more human. Johnny finally admitted that for most of his life, he didn't know how to love himself. And this realization, raw, painful, and liberating, became the key to understanding every misunderstood moment of his past. But what he revealed next? That was the part no one saw coming. Johnny Depp's revelation continued with something even deeper, something no one outside his inner circle had ever heard before. After admitting to a lifetime of battling self-doubt and emotional scars, Johnny opened up about the transformation that followed. Because at 61, he didn't just reveal what he struggled with, he revealed what finally saved him. And this was the part fans never expected. When Johnny stepped away from Hollywood, most assumed he was retreating, hiding from the world after years of turmoil. But in truth, he was doing the opposite. He was reclaiming his life for the very first time. The chaos, the pressure, the public scrutiny, he walked away not in defeat, but in rediscovery. He moved into a quieter rhythm, far from the glare of Los Angeles. He spent his mornings painting, his afternoons writing music, and his evenings surrounded by friends who saw Johnny the human, not Johnny the headline. Slowly, he rebuilt the parts of himself he had neglected for decades. And then he revealed something profoundly moving. Art was the lifeline that pulled him back from the edge. Johnny explained that during his darkest years, painting became a form of therapy. Instead of burying his emotions, he put them on canvas, portraits of people he loved, faces that inspired him, colors that reflected the storms inside him. For the first time, he allowed himself to process his pain instead of performing through it. Music played an equally important role. With his bandmates, he found laughter, freedom, and the kind of connection he'd long believed he didn't deserve. Music didn't judge him. It didn't demand perfection. It simply gave him space to breathe. But even these weren't the most shocking revelations. Johnny admitted that he had lived nearly his entire adult life believing he was unworthy of kindness. Compliments made him uncomfortable. Success made him suspicious. Love made him anxious. But during his healing, something changed. He began to accept that he was allowed to experience peace. He spoke about quiet mornings sipping coffee while watching sunlight spill across a balcony, moments so simple they felt revolutionary. He talked about long walks in unfamiliar cities where no one recognized him, where he could exist without expectation. He talked about reconnecting with his family, rebuilding trust, apologizing where he needed to and forgiving where he could. He revealed that he learned to say no, to meetings, to toxic people, to draining opportunities. He even learned to say no to the version of himself he had played for years, the tortured, mysterious artist. At 61, Johnny Depp finally understood that he could be more than the sum of his wounds. But the most surprising revelation came when he shared what he now considered his life's purpose. He wanted to help others who felt unseen. Not through speeches or grand gestures, but through authenticity, through telling the truth about his struggles so others might feel less alone. Through art that reflected vulnerability instead of perfection. Through music that comforted instead of impressed. Through human connection instead of celebrity distance. For the first time in decades, Johnny said he felt free from the script of fame, of expectation, of the persona he built to survive. He admitted he wasn't fully healed, because healing, he learned, isn't a destination. It's a lifelong practice. But he was finally at peace with who he was. Flawed. Sensitive. Creative. Resilient. And just when it seemed he had revealed everything, he hinted at one final truth, something he said would explain not only his past, but the future he was preparing for. What? The final revelation, the one Johnny Depp saved for last, was not dramatic, not scandalous, and not tied to Hollywood at all. It was something far more intimate, something he said he had been terrified to admit his entire life. At 61, after decades of fame, heartbreak, battles, and reinvention, Johnny Depp finally revealed what he truly wanted from the years he has left. And it wasn't another blockbuster. It wasn't a comeback. It wasn't legacy or redemption. It was a quiet life built on genuine connection, free from the noise that had defined so much of his past. Johnny looked back on his career with gratitude, but also with exhaustion. For years, the cameras, the interviews, the scrutiny, the speculation had stripped away pieces of his spirit. Even when he smiled, he was performing. Even when he succeeded, he felt alone. And even when he was surrounded by people, he often felt misunderstood. But in recent years, something shifted inside him. Through therapy, art, music, solitude, and the brutal honesty he finally embraced, Johnny discovered what he had been missing all along. He never actually wanted fame, he wanted peace. He explained that for the first time in his life, he wanted to wake up without pressure. He wanted to create art because he loved it, not because of contracts or expectations. He wanted to travel without a schedule, laugh without cameras nearby, and build relationships that were rooted in sincerity rather than status. And then he shared the most emotional truth of all. He finally believes he deserves to be happy. The man who spent decades hiding behind characters, masking his insecurities with eccentricity, and running from unresolved pain finally understood that he didn't need to earn joy, he simply needed to allow it. Johnny said he is now focused on 3 things. 1. Creating without fear. He plans to spend the next chapter of his life painting, writing music, producing small films, and collaborating with people who inspire him. Not for fame, not for awards, but for the pure love of expression. 2. Rebuilding his inner circle. He admitted he used to push people away because he feared disappointing them. But now, He is rebuilding relationships he once neglected, investing time in family, and surrounding himself with people who see him as Johnny the person, not Johnny the icon. 3. Protecting his peace. For the first time, Johnny is setting boundaries. He no longer says yes to everything. He is choosing privacy, rest, and healing over public approval. He is choosing the life he always wanted but never believed he had the right to live. And then came the revelation fans had long suspected but never heard him say. Johnny Depp finally feels free. Free from expectation. Free from the weight of his past. Free from the fear that once controlled him. Free from the belief that he had to earn love, success, or acceptance. He said the character he had been performing off-screen, mysterious, aloof, untouchable, was gone. In its place was a man ready to live honestly, imperfectly, and fully. As Johnny Depp enters this new chapter of his life, he is not chasing roles, headlines, or applause. He is chasing something much more meaningful. A life defined by truth, creativity, and peace. And for the first time in more than 40 years, the world is meeting the real Johnny Depp. Not the actor, not the myth, not the misunderstood figure. But the man who finally revealed what we all suspected.